On February 2, 2025, Robert Lighthizer, the former U.S. Trade Representative under President Trump, made headlines during an appearance on CBS's 60 Minutes. He articulated a strong warning about the economic and military threat posed by China, which he characterized as an existential threat to the United States. Lighthizer's comments came in the wake of recent tariff actions taken by the Trump administration, which included imposing a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico and a 10% tariff on Chinese goods, ostensibly to combat the flow of illicit drugs like fentanyl into the U.S. Lighthizer's primary concern revolves around China's overwhelming advantage in war materials production, which he claims is 400% greater than that of the U.S. He expressed that the U.S. has been losing what he referred to as an economic war against China for several decades. With an estimated $1 trillion being transferred to China annually due to unbalanced trade relations and Chinese espionage efforts. Lighthizer advocates for a policy he terms strategic decoupling, which would involve substantial tariffs on Chinese imports, potentially as high as 60%, to create a more balanced trade relationship. During the interview, he emphasized that the U.S. must limit imports from China and establish a framework where both countries trade an equal value of goods, specifically that the U.S. would sell $150 billion worth of goods to China while restricting imports to the same amount. This, he argues, would begin to disentangle the two economies and reduce American dependency on Chinese manufacturing. Lighthizer's commentary also touched on the broader implications for U.S. manufacturing. Since the early 2000s, the U.S. has seen significant job losses, with approximately 6 million manufacturing jobs disappearing over a decade. While there has been some recovery under subsequent administrations, he believes that strategic tariffs and a robust economic policy could revitalize American manufacturing and create better-paying jobs for Americans. Economists, however, have expressed skepticism about the efficacy of tariffs as a tool for economic recovery. Mary Lovely, an economist at the Peterson Institute for International Economics, cautioned that while tariffs might protect some jobs in specific sectors, they can also lead to higher consumer prices and job losses in industries reliant on imported goods. For example, the tariffs on steel initiated during Trump's first term resulted in job losses in downstream industries, illustrating the potential negative consequences of protectionist measures. The recent events leading to Lighthizer's remarks include February 2, 2025, Lighthizer's appearance on 60 Minutes, where he called for immediate action against China through significant tariffs. Recent tariff actions: President Trump announced tariffs aimed at Canada and Mexico in addition to existing tariffs on Chinese goods, using the rationale of addressing the fentanyl crisis. In conclusion, Lighthizer's advocacy for strategic tariffs reflects a growing sentiment among certain policymakers that the U.S. must reassess its trade relationship with China to protect its economic and national security interests. Nonetheless, the debate over the effectiveness of tariffs continues, with considerable concerns regarding their impact on the broader U.S. economy and consumer prices. As the geopolitical landscape evolves, the dialogue surrounding trade policies and their ramifications will remain a contentious issue in American politics. The content presents Robert Lighthizer's strong stance regarding the economic and strategic challenges posed by China to the United States. Here are some counterintuitive insights derived from the material. 1. Tariffs as a double-edged sword. While Lighthizer and Trump position tariffs as a means to protect American jobs and industries, economists like Mary Lovely argue that tariffs often lead to job losses in other sectors and higher consumer prices. This suggests that tariffs, rather than being a straightforward solution to trade imbalances, can create complex economic repercussions that may harm the very constituencies they aim to protect. 2. Perception of tariff burden. Lighthizer claims that tariffs are merely taxes on foreign countries, whereas economists assert that the financial burden ultimately falls on American consumers and businesses. This distinction highlights a significant divergence in understanding the impact of tariffs. Consumers may face increased prices for goods, which contradicts the notion that tariffs are solely a burden on foreign producers. 3. Manufacturing renaissance versus job losses. Lighthizer promotes the idea that imposing tariffs will lead to a manufacturing renaissance in the U.S., increasing production and creating better-paying jobs. However, the historical context provided indicates that tariffs can lead to job losses in sectors reliant on imported materials, suggesting that the anticipated benefits may not materialize as expected. 4. China's economic dominance as a catalyst for action. Lighthizer's assertion that China's war materials output is 400% greater than that of the U.S. serves as a rallying call for immediate action. However, this alarming statistic may oversimplify the complexities of international trade and military capacity, implying that economic output directly translates to military capability without accounting for the interplay of technology, strategy, and alliances. 5. Historical context of tariffs. The discussion suggests that while tariffs have been used throughout American history, the specific context and timing of their implementation matter significantly. The Great Depression's deepening due to tariffs contrasts with the post-World War II shift towards free trade, indicating that historical lessons about the economic impacts of tariffs may not be fully considered in current policy proposals. 6. Consumer behavior and economic adaptation. Lighthizer expresses confidence that American companies will adapt to new tariff regimes and find profitable paths forward. This optimistic viewpoint may overlook the potential for short-term disruptions and the challenges faced by companies in adjusting their supply chains, which could lead to instability in the economy and affect consumer choice. 7. The role of strategic decoupling. Lighthizer advocates for a controlled economic decoupling from China, which he believes will lead to a more balanced trade relationship. However, this approach runs counter to the prevailing trend of globalization and interconnected supply chains, raising questions about whether such a decoupling is feasible or beneficial in the long run. 8. National security versus economic integration. Lighthizer emphasizes the need for a strong military and economic positioning against China, suggesting that trade can be a tool for national security. However, the argument presents a tension between fostering economic relationships that could prevent conflict and the need to protect national interests, highlighting the complex trade-offs policymakers face in a globalized economy. These insights suggest that while the need for a reassessment of U.S. China trade relations is recognized, the proposed solutions and their anticipated outcomes are fraught with uncertainty and potential unintended consequences. In the recent discussions surrounding U.S. China trade relations, Robert Lighthizer's urgent call for action against China's economic policies is significant for several reasons, especially the aspects that tend to be overlooked by the general public. Here are some important points from Lighthizer's argument that deserve deeper consideration. 1. Existential threat narrative. Lighthizer's characterization of China as an existential threat is critical. This framing elevates the trade discourse from mere economic competition to a national security issue. By positioning China's economic practices as a direct threat to U.S. interests, Lighthizer taps into broader concerns about geopolitical stability. This narrative may resonate with policymakers and the public, who are increasingly wary of China's growing military capabilities and global influence. The significance lies in how this perspective can shift public opinion and justify more aggressive trade policies. 2. War material production comparison. The staggering claim that China has a 400% greater output of war materials compared to the U.S. is a pivotal point that many may overlook. This statistic underscores not just a trade imbalance but a potential strategic disadvantage in terms of military readiness. Lighthizer implies that the current economic relationship could hinder the U.S.'s ability to respond effectively in a military conflict. The significance of this point is profound. It suggests that economic policy is not just about dollars and cents but about the very capacity to defend national interests. 3. Strategic decoupling. Lighthizer's proposal for a strategic decoupling has significant implications. This policy would involve not just tariffs but a comprehensive re-evaluation of economic ties with China, including limiting investments and disentangling supply chains. The significance here is twofold. it reflects a growing recognition that economic interdependence may not equate to security, and it poses the question of how such decoupling could impact global trade dynamics, potentially leading to a bifurcated world economy. For job losses and manufacturing concerns, Lighthizer highlights the loss of approximately 6 million manufacturing jobs since the early 2000s, a point that resonates with many American workers. The emotional and economic impact of these job losses is often underrepresented in discussions about trade policy. The significance lies in the potential political ramifications, if the electorate feels that trade policies have directly contributed to their economic struggles. There may be increased support for protectionist measures. This is crucial for understanding the political landscape as the U.S. heads into another election cycle. 5. Economic warfare. The notion of an economic war that China is allegedly waging against the U.S. is another critical element that may be underestimated. Lighthizer's assertion that $1 trillion annually is being transferred to China due to unbalanced trade and espionage suggests a systematic strategy by China to undermine U.S. economic strength. The significance of framing the issue as warfare is that it calls for a more aggressive response, potentially altering the U.S. approach to international trade negotiations. 6. Tariffs as a tool for national security. Lighthizer argues that tariffs are not merely taxes but essential tools for protecting American jobs and national security. This perspective is significant as it challenges traditional economic theories that view tariffs primarily as economic burdens. By integrating national security into the rationale for tariffs, Lighthizer broadens the justification for such measures, which could garner support from both nationalists and those concerned about global stability. 7. Economic policy integration. Lighthizer emphasizes that tariffs should be part of a broader economic policy that includes tax cuts, spending cuts, and energy production initiatives. This holistic approach is significant because it counters the narrative that tariffs alone can revive American manufacturing. It suggests a comprehensive strategy that could appeal to a wider array of stakeholders, including those focused on fiscal responsibility and energy independence. 8. Historical context of tariffs. The historical lens through which tariffs have been viewed, particularly their role in deepening the Great Depression, is an important aspect that deserves more attention. Lighthizer's call for tariffs in the context of a potential new trade war raises questions about the lessons learned from past economic crises. The significance here is in understanding whether the proposed policies can truly lead to a renaissance in American manufacturing or whether they risk repeating historical mistakes. 9. Consumer impact and economic trade-offs. Economists like Mary Lovely caution that tariffs can lead to higher consumer prices and job losses in sectors dependent on imported goods. This point is often overlooked in favor of focusing on domestic job creation. The significance lies in the potential backlash from consumers facing higher costs, which could undermine support for protectionist policies. Understanding this trade-off is crucial for predicting public sentiment and the political feasibility of Lighthizer's proposals. 10. Long-term strategic vision. Finally, Lighthizer's proposals reflect a long-term strategic vision for U.S. China relations that extends beyond immediate trade deficits. The emphasis on creating a more balanced economic relationship and fostering domestic manufacturing could have lasting implications for U.S. competitiveness. The significance lies in whether this vision can be effectively communicated and implemented in a political landscape often dominated by short-term thinking and reactive policies. In conclusion, Lighthizer's insights into U.S.-China trade relations are laden with significance that goes beyond immediate economic concerns. The framing of China as an existential threat, the implications of strategic decoupling, and the historical context of tariffs all contribute to a nuanced understanding of the complexities involved in trade policy. As the U.S. navigates its economic relationship with China, these overlooked elements may play a pivotal role in shaping future strategies and public discourse. 1 is existential threat and strategic decoupling. Robert Lighthizer's declaration that China represents an existential threat to the U.S. hinges on its substantial superiority in war material output, 400% greater than that of the U.S. This assertion underlines the urgency he feels regarding national security and economic independence. Lighthizer advocates for a strategic decoupling from China, proposing significant tariffs and trade limitations to mitigate what he perceives as an ongoing economic war. This point warrants detailed examination as it intersects with broader issues of global trade dynamics, national security, and the implications of economic interdependence. 2. Impact of tariffs on U.S. economy. Lighthizer's proposed tariffs, potentially as high as 60% on Chinese imports, serve as a focal point for debate regarding the effectiveness of protectionist policies. While Lighthizer argues that such tariffs would protect American jobs and stimulate domestic manufacturing, economists such as Mary Lovely caution that they could lead to higher consumer prices and job losses in industries reliant on imports. Analyzing the economic ramifications of these tariffs along with their historical context and potential for retaliation from trading partners is crucial for understanding the broader implications of protectionist measures. 3. Manufacturing job losses and recovery prospects. The discussion around the loss of approximately 6 million manufacturing jobs in the U.S. since the early 2000s highlights a critical concern for policymakers. Lighthizer's optimism about the potential resurgence of American manufacturing through tariffs and economic policy contrasts sharply with the reality of job losses and factory closures. A thorough analysis of the factors contributing to manufacturing decline, the efficacy of proposed recovery strategies, and the potential for job creation in a changing economic landscape is essential to assess the viability of Lighthizer's proposals. 4. Complexities of U.S. China trade relations. The broader context of U.S. China trade relations, characterized by unbalanced trade and issues of technological espionage, adds layers of complexity to discussions about tariffs and economic policy. Lighthizer's assertion that around $1 trillion annually is being transferred to China raises questions about the sustainability of such a trade relationship and the implications for U.S. economic sovereignty. Delving into these complexities involves exploring the historical evolution of trade agreements, the strategic interests of both nations, and the potential for diplomatic resolutions versus escalatory trade wars. These points provide a comprehensive framework for in-depth analysis and discussion on the implications of Lighthizer's assertions and the future of U.S.-China trade relations. 1. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act 1930. This piece of legislation raised tariffs on hundreds of imports aiming to protect American industry during the Great Depression. Instead, it led to retaliatory tariffs from other countries, deepening the global economic downturn and contributing to a significant decline in international trade. Economists widely criticize the act for exacerbating the economic crisis, illustrating the potential dangers of aggressive tariff policies. 2. The U.S.-China trade war 2018-present, initiated under President Trump. This trade conflict involved the imposition of tariffs on billions of dollars worth of goods from China with the aim of addressing trade imbalances and intellectual property theft. The trade war has led to significant economic repercussions on both sides, affecting global supply chains, increasing costs for consumers, and sparking retaliatory tariffs from China, thereby heightening tensions between the two nations. 3. The trade policy of the Roman Empire 1st to 2nd century AD. The Roman Empire's approach to trade included tariffs and restrictions aimed at protecting its economy from external competitors. Roman leaders often imposed high taxes on imported goods to support local industries. However, these measures sometimes led to trade disputes with neighboring regions and affected the flow of goods, demonstrating the complexities and risks associated with protectionist trade policies in historical contexts. The future outlook for U.S.-China trade relations, particularly in light of Robert Lighthizer's recent statements, seems poised for significant transformations driven by escalating economic competition and geopolitical tensions. Lighthizer, a key figure in the Trump administration's trade policy, characterizes China as an existential threat to the U.S. due to its overwhelming advantage in production capabilities, particularly in military materials. His call for strategic decoupling indicates a shift toward a more protectionist stance that could reshape the global trade landscape. Predictions for U.S. China trade relations. 1. Increased tariffs and trade barriers. Lighthizer's advocacy for tariffs as high as 60% on Chinese imports suggests a future where the U.S. may implement broad and aggressive trade barriers. Such tariffs aim to protect American jobs and industries but could lead to retaliatory measures from China and other trading partners, potentially igniting a renewed trade war. 2. Manufacturing renaissance in the U.S. If the proposed tariffs and strategic policies are enacted successfully, there could be a resurgence of domestic manufacturing. This may be characterized by increased investment in U.S. factories, job creation in manufacturing sectors, and a push towards self-sufficiency in critical industries. However, the extent of this revival will depend on various factors, including how businesses adapt to new economic realities and the overall economic climate. 3. Shift in supply chains. Companies might begin to re-evaluate their supply chains, seeking to reduce dependency on Chinese goods. This could result in businesses relocating production to other countries or bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. However, this transition may be challenging and time-consuming, with potential short-term disruptions to supply networks and increased costs. For national security focus, the intertwining of trade policy and national security is likely to intensify. The U.S. government may impose stricter regulations on technology transfers and foreign investments, particularly in sectors deemed critical to national security. This could lead to heightened scrutiny of Chinese investments in American companies and technologies. 5. Consumer impact. The implementation of high tariffs could lead to increased prices for a wide range of consumer goods. While the intention is to protect domestic production, this may result in higher costs for American consumers. Economists warn that such measures could ultimately burden middle-class families, increasing public dissatisfaction with trade policies. 6. Geopolitical tensions. As the U.S. and China continue to navigate their complex relationship, geopolitical tensions may rise. Diplomatic relations could become strained not only over trade but also on issues like technology, military presence in the Asia-Pacific region, and human rights concerns. This could lead to a more fragmented global economy where countries align more closely with either the U.S. or China. 7. Innovation and technology competition. The U.S. might accelerate its efforts to maintain technological supremacy, especially in areas like artificial intelligence, semiconductors, and green technologies. This could lead to increased investment in R&D and education, aimed at fostering a new generation of American innovators capable of competing with China's rapid advancements. Economic and policy implications. Fiscal policies. The U.S. government may adopt a more interventionist approach, utilizing subsidies to support key industries affected by tariffs. This could assist sectors like steel and technology, although the effectiveness of such policies remains debated among economists. Long-term economic strategy. There may be a growing consensus among U.S. policymakers to craft a long-term economic strategy focused on reducing trade deficits, enhancing domestic production capabilities, and fostering innovation. This strategy would require bipartisan support to be sustainable. Global trade dynamics. As the U.S. imposes tariffs and seeks to decouple its economy from China, other nations may adjust their trade policies in response. Countries in Europe and Asia could either align with the U.S. or seek to strengthen their ties with China, leading to a bifurcated global trade system. Conclusion. In summary, the future of U.S.-China trade relations appears fraught with challenges but ripe with opportunities for change. The proposed tariffs and strategic decoupling advocated by Lighthizer could herald a new era of protectionism, potentially reshaping global trade dynamics and impacting consumers, industries, and international relations. As policymakers navigate these turbulent waters, the need for a balanced approach that safeguards American interests while fostering global cooperation will be paramount. The outcome of these policies will significantly influence not only the U.S. economy but also its position on the world stage in the coming years.